Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I am very pleased to present my review of Delilah Dawson's YA novel, Hit. This is the first in a duology featuring this book, Hit, and its sequel, Strike. This is a YA duology with a kind of dystopian flair, and I'll get into that in a bit later. I should preface this review by saying that even though this is a YA book, this is not meant for young people. I would not recommend this to anyone who's not already an adult because there is an intense level of language that is just not appropriate for kids in this book. It's really bad. There are some minor sexual elements, but it's not as bad as the language in this book. The language is pretty rough. It's not as bad as some books that are out there. I realize there's some books that go way worse. I've read a lot of books that go way worse, but this is marketed towards teenagers, and it should because it shouldn't have that kind of language. If she'd taken out a lot of the language, this would have bumped up even higher, but I'll get to that in a second. I also want to say that I became a fan of Delilah S. Dawson because of her Star Wars books, Phasma and Black Spire. With these two books, she proved that she can write epic plots, that she has a very unique and easily readable writing style, and that she has a freshness to her writing that I always enjoy reading. She never seems bland, she always seems like she's ready to come up with new ideas, whether it's in Star Wars or not. And so I read these two books, and I instantly wanted to read more, and I was disappointed that we still have not gotten the third book of this Phasma trilogy. We really should have. We need a third book, Del Rey, darn it. And anyway, so I read these two books, and I wanted to read more from her. I did pick up a book she co-wrote with Kevin Hearn that's part of a trilogy that they created called The Tales of Pell, Kill the Farm Boy. And I'll be honest, I really didn't like this book. I read this back in 2019, and it was one of the worst books of the year that I read. I really did not like it. Everything about this book irked me in all the ways it shouldn't have. And so I was a bit unsure whether I would ever pick up more books from Delilah Dawson because this put a bad taste in my mouth. But I knew I liked her Star Wars books, so I knew she could deliver. So I thought I would have to find the right books and series to read that I'd enjoy from her. And I found out she's actually doing a book signing relatively near me eventually this year. And so I want to be able to go there and meet her and to be able to talk with her books if I have the chance. So when I was in the used bookstore, I saw this copy of Hit there. And I thought, you know what, this might be fun. I'm going to read this. And it's, first of all, it's a very interesting cover. It pulls you in. It's a license plate, and the subtitle of the book is "Always Read the Fine Print," which is an awesome subtitle if you know the premise, which I'll get into in a second. And so this is a very good cover, I think, and I will be honest, this is a highly enjoyable and entertaining book. I read this book in only one day, which sometimes means it's just short, which it is a fairly short book. It's got larger print type, it's meant for teenagers, so you can read it fairly quickly, but also it's just so entertaining. It's just I had to find out what happened. I kept turning the pages, which is a very good thing. The faster you make me want to read your book, not just read your book, but want to read your book, the better you're doing as an author. And Delilah Dawson nailed that. I will go into this review talking about there are two main characters, and then there's also just the premise behind this. This premise is a dystopian theme with a twist. Most dystopian series, when you're reading something like Divergent, or you're reading something like Hunger Games or something, we're starting in the middle, or in actuality, towards the end of a dystopian regime. We're seeing what happens when the new person is coming to overthrow the regime, the person who's fighting back after years of oppression. This book takes the opposite approach, whereas this character is sucked into the regime right as it's being built. We're seeing day one of the dystopian regime. And this dystopian regime, and the whole premise of the book is that this bank takes over the entire United States and therefore takes over all accumulated debt. And basically, they have a little fine print in their whenever you take out debt with them that says if you don't pay it back in full when they say, they will either kill you or they will make you work for them, or you must pay it back in full. And for most people, they can't pay it back in full, and most people are not willing to go off as bounty hunters, so they all die. Our main character is one of the few that says yes and becomes a bounty hunter and works for this oppressive regime known as Valor. And I really found that interesting as a premise. It's a very unique premise. I must say, it is absolutely ridiculous. Go into reading this book knowing that there is nothing plausible. The way that things happen in this book are totally unrealistic. There's no way the country would fall into chaos this quickly. There is no way that the U.S. that people would miss such an important concept. Now, everyday people absolutely would miss the fine print, would miss the something in there about your lung and your kidneys, and like that's kind of normal, and that's actually the whole point of the book. But the idea that the government would miss that is also absurd. And there's other ridiculous stuff in here. And then there's some not so ridiculous stuff that makes you go, maybe that could happen. And so go in knowing this is a ridiculous plot, but it's actually quite enjoyable. If you just sit back and you're just like, all right, let's go on an adventure, you're going to have a lot of fun with this book. It's quite entertaining, despite all the death. There is a lot of death in the book. The book centers around two main characters. There is a first-person point of view character, and that is Patsy Cline. She is by far the main protagonist. And then she has someone she meets along her murderous bounty hunter route named Wyatt. And I will not say his last name for spoilers' sake. But Wyatt joins along very early in the book, and the two of them are working together to conduct these bounty hunting missions, aka assassinations. And I liked Patsy Cline. I thought she was a very good cipher character. She has enough personality that you understand her, and that she's her own character. And she also has enough history and backstory and personality that makes her sympathetic. But she isn't wildly different than most female protagonists in these dystopian YA novels, in that she kind of serves as a cipher. You can put yourself as the reader into her shoes. It's very easy to understand her, and she's also learning everything for the first time, stepping into this new world of Valor's leadership. I, however, really locked on to the character of Wyatt. Wyatt is a very interesting character. He's very mysterious a lot of the time, and he is a complete mix between two seemingly polar opposite ideas. He is both the roguish, devil-may-care bad boy on one hand, and on the other hand, he is the knight in shining armor, chivalrous, epic protagonist on the other hand. And you would think those are opposing personality traits, but Delilah Dawson actually brings them together in him in a way that I found very satisfying and interesting. And it was a twist on both tropes that I really liked. And so the two of them really are the lion's share of the storyline, and I really liked reading about them together. I also want to say that Delilah Dawson has this writing style that just is so raw. It just oozes into her stories. I would say she is closest in writing style to a Chuck Wendig, who I've read a couple of his books, and both of them are very fresh. But what makes Delilah Dawson superior to Wendig is that Wendig feels like he's hitting you over the head with his worldview, whereas Delilah Dawson is sneaking it in, and there's little lines that are like, I see what you did there. But and even though there are very much pointed arguments in this book, this is a much more, anyone could read this and enjoy it, no matter what you believe, no matter what your personality is. This is a very much anybody theoretically could read this. And that's why I like Delilah Dawson's writing much better than Wendig's, because he feels like he's like attacking you if you don't agree with him. And this doesn't feel like that in this book. This feels very much open, which I liked. The book is a relatively short read, as I mentioned. That might just be because I am a fast reader, but it also is because it's only about 330 pages in the YA format, but still really worth it, really quick. It's fast-paced. It's action-packed. There's never, because of the way she sets up the the book in its chapters, there is not a single chapter that is boring, because each chapter has something exhilarating and exciting as part of it, which I really liked. And I liked this book so much that I have already ordered the second book, and it is supposed to arrive soon. Hopefully it will arrive before I get to go meet her, because I want to be able to talk more about her books. But this is a very difficult grading scale, because when it comes to entertainment, character likability, and relatability, and sympathy, and the premise, and the plot, all of it, it's amazing. Superbly well done. Absolutely interesting. Albeit somewhat ridiculous. And the writing style was so fresh and interesting that I just like it. But I have to say this again, I cannot get behind the language that is used in this book. It is incredibly excessive and has no place in a YA book. And I'm not talking about a couple of D words here or there. I'm talking there is hard language throughout the book. It is not incessant necessarily. It is not on every page, but it is quite often, and sometimes multiple times a page occasionally. And it's just so frustrating that it would appear in a book meant for teenagers, because teenagers shouldn't be reading that stuff yet. So that brings it down a little bit in my scale, but still, despite that, I highly recommend the book for adults. It's still an excellent novel. And I don't really like YA generally, and yet I still loved this novel. So that's a good sign that there's YA books that can win me over. I would give this an 8.5 out of 10. Really solid. Just missed the top tier for me because of the language and because of some of the ridiculousness of the plot. But still, highly enjoyed it. So if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. If you've read other Delilah Dawson books, let me know which books you think I should read of hers. I'm wanting to read more because I am a fan of her writing style. So until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.